we're not extending your contract, and today was your final day in clinic. And there was a zero warning. I thought I was going into a meeting to renegotiate my contract because I requested the meeting, and I showed up and they fired me. What if I had gone and, driven my car off of it? That's not far-fetched in our world for doctors. And that's the thing that scares me the most about this happening to someone else who's not in a position like that I was fortunate to be in. And I wasn't doing those preparations because I was like, what if I get fired? I never thought I would get fired.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you're new here. We have with us today Dr. Stephen Lewellis. Stephen is a dermatologist in Wisconsin, and we're going to be talking about a challenging yet important topic about being terminated without cause and how you can land on your own 2 feet. So before we go into that, Stephen, can you share with us who you are?
You bet. First, Jillian, I really appreciate you having me on the show. I've been a fan of yours, and I feel privileged to be able to talk to your audience and share your audience with you. So thanks for having me. And anytime I get to share any part of my story, but particularly this one, it feels valuable to me because I know there are other doctors out there who need to hear this, and who will benefit from hearing things like this from other docs. So my story outside of that, I grew up in Pennsylvania, on the eastern part of Pennsylvania, in a city called, near a city called Allentown. Big Philadelphia sports fan my whole life, still am. But I migrated away from there pretty much right after high school. And I went to a nearby college, Haverford College, a small liberal arts college, had a great time there, then went straight to New York University for my MD and PhD. I did a medical scientist training program there.
Awesome.
That is where I met my wife. She is certainly my better half, and she is a PhD, and she takes care of kids with blood cancers. And so she takes care of them in the lab. She helps develop tests to detect or to kind of figure out why a child isn't responding to a chemotherapy regimen, or predict if they won't respond to a chemotherapy regimen, so they can skip giving that altogether and save time and move on to another one. So that is, I think that's really admirable. So we've been together since then. I dragged her all over the country. She was great in being willing to be with me on that journey. I went to Utah for a year for internship, which was great. We loved skiing there and taking our dog on hikes. It was just a pretty idyllic place to live. And then 3 years at Stanford for my derm residency. And finally, we went back to the Midwest. I was a couple of years in Minneapolis for my first job, just a typical corporate medicine job. And then we went closer to her parents. I convinced her to come here to central Wisconsin, back to where she grew up, for a better job for me, but also for I have 2 little kids now, and them being close to one set of grandparents is the best thing in the world I can imagine for them. And I really enjoy being close to my in-laws as well. So that's where we are, kind of catching up to the abrupt termination that you mentioned, but that's my story up until then. And before I was terminated, I was just 4+ years in corporate healthcare, just trying to learn how to be a good dermatologist. That's why I took a job out of residency. Some other reasons as well that I'm happy to get into. Kind of coming out of residency, I think a lot of us probably feel this way. It doesn't feel like there are a whole lot of options, especially private independent practice. I don't know about you, but I certainly didn't feel from a lot of people that was a great option or a feasible option. There weren't a lot of role models, but maybe given your training, maybe that's a little bit different, but you can share that with me if you'd like. But certainly coming out of medical school, it's just we don't have a lot of people telling us, yeah, go out and start a practice, like rock and
No.
roll. Insurance
Yeah.
reimbursements just keep
No.
going up, and it's easy to run a practice. Overhead's not so bad. You hear all
Yes.
everything,
This is
everything
a
but that.
great, it's such a great
So
point because you'll talk about the branding and the things that you were doing while you were an employed physician.
yeah,
And this happens in dental school and in medicine where we don't learn business.
not a
And
thing.
then the transition period from medical school to residency, residency to a private practice where you
Hmm.
feel like you're on your own, you must know everything. And
Yeah,
while you're trying to learn the business side, can feel all too consuming and overwhelming. And we all
yes.
have that personality where a lot of us are have high levels of self-doubt. And end of residency is really just the beginning, right? It's
Hmm.
like just the beginning of all this knowledge that
Totally.
accumulated and now we're going to be applying it kind of on our own.
Yeah,
So yeah, I agree. And a lot of times it's nice to be with mentors. And where can you
yeah.
find that? Like a lot of times people stay in academia even though there's challenges. I've been in
Hmm.
academia for a long time.
Yeah.
And then corporate medicine and
Yeah.
dentistry are a lot of times where people find that they develop their skills. So
Sure. Yeah, it's really an interesting thing that we just it's just a really a lack of role models. It feels like I'm looking back on my experience, at least, because it felt like there I wasn't making a decision. It just kind of felt like, yeah, of course I'm going to get a job because what else? I don't want to go in academia, so what else is there?
mhm.
That sort of thing. But that tide is turning, and it took me a long time or a little while to come to it. But I don't regret it. I did want to spend time just doing my like post residency, basically the
Mhm.
residency that I was going to do, but on my own, and that was really helpful to allow me to afford to have the bandwidth necessary to think about starting a practice, have the confidence to know I could start a practice, and just be on autopilot enough that I could think about those other things and invest in them while still doing a good job at my primary job. So I'm glad I went that route. And wasn't expecting to be going the independent practice route quite yet, although I did kind of see it eventually. But
Mhm.
this whole abrupt termination thing pushed me out of the nest earlier than I thought. That was traumatic for my family for obvious reasons, but we're getting through it, and I'm going to back at it as a blessing in disguise for sure, because it's what was meant to happen anyway. The reason they got rid of me, I would imagine, is just because our values were just clearly not aligned, and that I'm not ashamed of that because I don't want to be aligned with the values of organizations like that. But it took me a while to realize that.
And it's hard, as you say, it's dramatic. And of course, I don't
Oh
want to
yeah.
ask so many questions when people are going through this. When I electively transitioned out of my residency, even that was traumatic. And that was like I kind of knew it
Hmm.
was coming for a while and made the decision. But it's that whole grieving period where you had this vision and it was
Hmm.
premature and then it shakes your identity. And without the things you are doing on the side, like if we are not preparing, like prepare for
Yeah.
the worst, hope for the best,
Yeah.
how do you think that would have changed where you are right now?
I think about it all the time, and I didn't do it intentionally for that reason. I'm certainly preaching this is a real possibility. It's low risk, and you can do plenty of things to mitigate that risk. I am guilty of doing things at my job that were where I was an employee, where I was behaving because I'm a physician, and that inherently is a conflict. Being a physician or a dentist, a professional like that who is also an employee, and having bosses who are running the show who are not of that profession often is inherently a conflict and a difficult thing. So I spoke up in ways that as if I was a leader, because I was trying to be a leader. But I needed to also realize that, hey, you're an employee. You're accepting certain benefits of being an employee, and in exchange for that, you're trading certain things. So I was kind of trying to have my cake and eat it too, I suppose. But I also believe that, unfortunately, these big organizations need physicians who will step up, because there's so much erosion of trust from patients, and potential safety issues. When I know people who have stood up for patient safety issues and have been told, you got to shut up or else. And then the next day they don't shut up and they're gone.
Yeah.
And they're not given a reason why. They don't need a lot of states don't require a cause for termination. But so these organizations are happy to get rid of those folks, I think. But that's a scary thing. And I think the only way to challenge that is from the outside, getting enough of us doing independent things again, the way it used to be. And then that will gradually turn the tides. It's a much more difficult battle to fight from within.
And it's if you weren't to speak up, right? A lot
Yeah.
of people, I was former military and I
Mhm.
spoke up on some things, and it is why I was easier to medically discharge.
Gotcha.
And there's a lot of fear of retaliation. So
Mhm.
there's sexual trauma in the military, there's having mental illnesses that you need support for. Those things, if you speak up about them, I got discharged because I got help for suicidal ideation in residency. Had I not spoken up, I wouldn't be here. Had you
Yeah.
not spoken up and you lived out of alignment with your values, you would
Yeah.
know it. We get moral injury when we do that.
Yeah.
And there are, when we think about burnout and moral injury and moral distress, it's staying in a system
Mm.
that is out of alignment with your
Yeah.
values. And if we're not taking care of employees, well, then the patients are going to suffer. So if you're advocating for the patients, but they're not taking care of the employees, it's showing that they're not prioritizing the
Yeah.
patients.
Yeah.
We know that you're prioritizing the patients, not
Yeah.
that all reviews are always like, we know we don't want to
Yeah.
trigger anyone here that's being, getting their revenue based off of
Yeah.
some pissed off type of reviews, but you have glowing reviews from your patients.
Mhm.
You're doing a great job. This is clearly not something about your performance.
Yeah. And they told me that straight up. In that room after I got my jaw up off the floor, and I just realized I didn't address the first question, the primary question you asked about how I prepared to be more resilient to that. And I want to touch on that. But
Yes.
as I was getting my jaw off the floor in that room where they told me they're not extending my contract, and they said, we're not extending your contract, and today was your final day in clinic. And there was a zero warning. I thought I was going into a meeting to renegotiate my contract because I requested the meeting, and I showed up and they fired me. So, and that's another thing they don't like. They don't like doctors who A, know they have a contract, B, know when it is about to auto renew, because that's a wonderful strategy they use, and ones who are going to say, hey, I've been here 2 years. No one's told me about how I've been doing. I would like this contract not to just auto renew. That's a weird thing for a professional. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about if it warrants any changes. And they didn't like that, I don't think, either. So that so reflecting back on that experience, I know that had I not done the work to prepare myself financially for first and foremost, but also do the work, as a lot of us who are once where you're sort of in this community of people who I avoid like-minded. I really like Dr. Becky. She has a podcast, Good Inside. She's a clinical psychologist. And at the end of her show, she talks about her community of valued people. And I
Yes.
thought that was really nice. I don't want to
Yes.
steal it from her, but it makes,
Yes.
I would say open-minded and valued people, because we
Yes.
can get in echo chambers and that's dangerous. And you understand the importance of doing this mental work. It doesn't, before you do any of it and realize the values or the value of it, it all sounds it sounds too good to be true, kind of like, does it really? That's how I thought about therapy before I did therapy. Like, how could therapy actually, how could just talking to someone be
Yeah.
helpful, right? And then you do it and you just have to kind of do it to realize. So the ways that I happened to prepare myself for this were mainly financially, because that's the thing that came most naturally to me. I was naturally drawn to that stuff ever since being a little kid. So it was fun for me to know what a Roth IRA was, and all the white coat investor type of stuff. That was fun for me. So I'm fortunate that it was easy for me to care about that stuff. I know that there are plenty of people who that's not fun for, and why would we expect them to like be excited to care about it? But that still you're still responsible for it. So ask someone else to care about it or something like that.
Mhm.
But because I wasn't paycheck to paycheck and my family wasn't paycheck to paycheck, I felt comfortable, probably subconsciously more comfortable speaking my mind and being in alignment with my values within my employed position. Uh, so that I was taking risks that I wouldn't have taken if I was extremely dependent on that next paycheck. Uh, so I was kind of walking on the wild side there, but the thinking back on it, if I hadn't done that preparation, I that shock and that trauma, and then the idea of going home and having to tell my wife, which was extremely traumatic for both of us, even though we were not going to miss a mortgage payment or be at risk for anything like that, was still horrible. And I can only imagine what it would have been like if we were, house poor and car payments and private school for the kids and, the typical doctor that
Yeah.
seems well to do, but is just buried in bills. And I like you mentioned suicide. Like I didn't think about that, but when it happened and the way the the unbelievably inhumane way it was delivered, like robotic way it was delivered, made me immediately think of the physician suicide epidemic. Like
Yes.
you didn't give me any resources when I left here, and that's probably because of legal stuff. You didn't want to like suggest that you were doing anything harmful to me. You didn't say anything about like, well, we can imagine this is difficult. You have children and you just moved here a couple years ago. And so if you need any research, anything like that, what if I had gone and, driven my car off of it? That's not far fetched in our world for doctors. And that's the thing that scares me the most about this happening to someone else who's not in a position like that I was fortunate to be in. And I wasn't doing those preparations because I was like, what if I get fired? I
Yeah.
never thought I would get fired, because that's the one thing where doctors and dentists are indoctrinated, I'm sure, about so many things during training, and most of them are negative these days, unfortunately. The one positive thing is job security.
Mhm.
Oh, you're a doctor, dentist, you'll
Oh,
work anywhere.
yes. Let's talk
And
about job
you'll
security.
always have a job.
So I was
Oh,
a
please.
hospital-based dentist. I was a hospital-based dental faculty member when COVID hit. I had
Oh,
just moved. I had bought a
that taught a
house.
lot of us.
Yeah, I bought a house. It was my first job out of residency. I was
Yeah.
scared poopless because I was going into hospital dentistry, and I don't practice dentistry. I'm an oral medicine specialist. So I was supposed to be teaching them how to manage medically complex patients. And then it turned out not to be a good fit. And I was sitting right next to the
Can we have a
people.
lichen planus podcast, please? Like
Yes,
an
we
oral
can.
lichen
I
planus?
treat a lot of
We should.
lichen planus.
Sorry
I
to
give
interrupt.
lectures on lichen planus.
Yes,
But
I have it actually, and I
oh
treat it too, and it's very difficult.
yeah, we should. We worked a lot with the dermatologist.
Yeah, we could do that. All right, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt.
No, that's okay. I have another channel. The mouth is connected to the body. It would be a perfect topic for that.
Cool.
It's a
Let's
new
do
channel.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's do that.
All
Okay.
right.
And everyone else should go watch that
Yeah,
channel is new, so it's developing.
that's very fun. Good for you.
Yeah, but so I went from my oral surgery residency to being burnout to this is what can happen to people if they're in your situation and they don't have resources. What happens is you take that trauma that you had, and then if you feel obligated to get another job, you get whatever you can. It doesn't allow you to process, and then
Absolutely not.
you're not putting yourself in a
You're
good
right back
situation.
in it.
So for me, I interviewed and got my next job while inpatient in eating disorder unit. Well, and so I know, like, I know this is it's different but related. And
No, it's so related.
I was fried, burnout. I got my next residency. I handed over my resignation for oral surgery. I think 2 days, 1 or 2 days later, I was in oral medicine residency. They
Mm,
were wanting me to do oral surgery and be on call for 2 weeks straight. I was like, that was the worst thing I could have done for my healing. And like my
mhm.
ex-boyfriend had died and so much grief and just like losing a job, it's all
Yeah,
grief. And if you don't
yeah.
process it, you
Yes.
store it, you get PTSD. It's like you
Mhm.
need to take that time. And in order to afford the time, be financially savvy, right? Have your resources so you can have your own
Yeah.
back. It's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But I just wish that people would avoid that lifestyle creep. And I know a lot of people like the financial independence,
Hmm.
retire early or not, but that
Yeah.
financial independence really a
That's
lot
important.
too. Yeah.
Independent. Yeah.
It gives you that security, like you just said. And so then for my second my residency year, I was still burnt out, took that faculty position, and then COVID hit. I had bought the house and I was like, should never have done that. Wouldn't recommend first job out of residency buying a house.
Yeah.
But I, I had a scarcity mindset. So I had hoarded money.
Hmm.
And then I sold the condo and everything in it. And that gave me the opportunity to like breathe. But
Yeah.
it was my lowest point mentally.
Hmm.
And then I moved across the country for my new job, and I left clinic and like, I'm going to do something different. And then went into coaching and all those things. But you learn
Yeah.
along the way, like for those people in those moments, they get to the dark places. It's such a vulnerable period of time.
Yeah.
And we think it won't happen to us. And it is ridiculous and how much it's increasing and how much we're hearing the stories, and you sharing your story is so important because there's that quote that your story can become someone else's survival guide.
Yeah.
So
That
I
is,
really,
that's the ticket. And so thank you for sharing your story in the many ways you already have. And just here again, I'm sorry you that's a lot to go through. And you came out on the other side a transformed person, and now you can share that with other people and help show people that, there's a way, and we all have to come. I believe we all have to reach our breaking point or tipping point. There comes a time in your life when you're ready to hear and receive this type of a certain type of talk. And everyone, that's why I will never think the coaching space, for instance, is saturated, because we all say the same. I'm not a coach. I'm not a coach, but we all say the same things in a slightly different way, but the same sort of true important things, and everyone needs to hear it in a certain way from a certain person. So even if it's just one person out there who's waiting to hear it from you specifically, it's still valuable that you put it out there, and likely it's going to be a lot more people than that. So I commend you for that, and I'm sure you're much more satisfied in your career. I would imagine the fact that you're able to do kind of sort of multiple, wear multiple hats in a very authentic way now. And that preparation, I feel very fortunate that I did it, because I did not do it. I did it because I had a scarcity mindset, just like you had.
yeah.
When I was little, I remember counting my money and never wanting to spend it. And I had a not spending. I feel like a not spending problem can be as bad as a spending problem.
Yeah.
It makes you cheap. It makes you not generous. It makes you not nice to yourself, all those things. And I got over that. But at the beginning, it was still that way. And I, it's just the journey is so interesting, that how different people come to those realizations, and how they sort of prepare themselves for things like this. And I yeah, I'm just grateful for it. But it wasn't because I thought I was ever going to lose my job. That's for sure. Like I said earlier, I read my contract, and I wish I had a lawyer read it so that they would have been like, this non-compete, we could probably get that down to 1 year instead of 2 years, that sort of thing. And that I recommend that too. Even if you think you're
Yes.
smart, a brilliant lawyer. Her name is Amanda Hill. She's awesome.
Yes. I was going to say that
She's
too.
the best. Yes.
Hill.
Good for you, Amanda. Free publicity for you. You're awesome.
Yes.
So just go get more clients, because you're going to help people. And she said, an EKG looks like gibberish to me. An employment contract should look like gibberish to you. Period. Like, release yourself. And even if you feel like I got this, like I can sort of understand this, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what the important part is. You don't know what could easily be negotiated in a non-negotiable standard boilerplate contract.
Yeah.
So, Amanda's great.
I love Amanda. Yeah, she speaks. So she works with clients in Texas, but she often speaks to she's a huge physician advocate. Just like I know Kim Downey and you were on Kevin
Kim
Poe's podcast. We'll put that link down too. So Kevin Downey is a physical therapist, a huge physician advocate. And those are the two people.
I think you just said Kevin the second time, but yeah.
I said Kevin. Yes, Kim Downey.
Yeah.
Kevin Poe is also
Kevin
a
Poe,
huge advocate.
yeah.
But When you were talking about the scarcity mindset, I was listening to the author of the Psychology of Money on a podcast.
Oh, he's great. Yeah.
He was so great. He says he saves like a pessimist and invests like an optimist.
Yeah.
And he said
I
he
like that.
saves more than a financial advisor would want him to. And
Yep.
I still do that because I constantly am in this state of career transition, it seems like.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I like how you demonstrated that you're kind of learning to go from that scarcity mindset to shift
Yeah.
a little bit to spending more. But it
For sure.
seems like a lot of times we're black and white, and like there's a
Yeah.
little bit of that
You want to
gray.
balance, and I feel very balanced now, but I've never gone. I didn't overcompensate and become like a spend whatever the name for that is, but I don't. It used to be painful. Like when I was a child, it was painful for me to spend whatever little money that I accumulated by doing whatever. I remember that. And as a teenager as well, and even in college, where I just had a little bit of money, it wasn't like always ordering out like all my friends were, because I just felt like I needed to save that money for some reason. And it all comes from somewhere, and partly genetics, partly what just what you see and how you think. But I'm glad that I found a balance rather than swinging the pendulum way to the other side. But it is balance, like anything else with that, is really important. I don't think there's no honor or in being unwilling to spend money on yourself or someone else. That's for sure. So yeah.
You were talking about preparation. So for
Yeah.
people who are like, how the heck did he prepare? What should I
Yeah.
do? Can you go into some more details on that?
Yes. This is not a medical or a financial book, but books. First of all,
Wait,
books
what is that one?
are.
What's that one?
This was
Oh,
What Got You Here Won't Get You There, which is an incredibly
oh,
important book. Marshall Goldsmith.
interesting. Okay,
This
okay.
is it's called it's the subtitle that I think this is great. I just thought of this, but this is the book with the best title of all time, in my opinion, one of them, and the worst subtitle. Because What Got You Here Won't Get You There explains everything about the book, and you like don't have to read the book. As a successful person, quote unquote, a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists, there's a lot of standard hoops that we have to jump through, and we use the same tools over and over again for the first 2.5 decades of our lives. And then we get into the quote unquote real world where we have a job, or maybe we're managing people, or maybe we're running an organization, practice, etc. If you just keep using those same tools, you will fail miserably. And if you don't identify the things that are the tools that you're overusing for the wrong things, and there's just a set of like 20 of them that that he identifies in here, and we all do a few of them, you will grate on people heavily. You won't have any idea you're doing it, and you will fail to get there. You got here, but the things you use to get here will not get you there to that. So the subtitle is just obnoxious. It's called How Successful People Become Even More Successful. So I don't like that.
Interesting.
But
Yeah.
anyway, What Got You Here Won't Get You There is a great title. But back to your point, books are so easy. They're free if you have a library. Otherwise, they are very inexpensive for what they offer. You just actually have to read them. That's the unfortunate part for people who
Read
don't
and
like to
apply.
listen to them. Yes.
Read and apply.
And
Because
apply. That's the
so
next
you
thing I was going
read
to say.
it, yes, like, oh, I think I got it. No,
Yeah.
apply,
Yeah.
apply, apply.
Yeah. So that is the that is why I sort of flipped the script on it being scared of being an entrepreneur, starting a business, for instance. I hear all the things about so many small businesses fail, and it almost feels like gambling when you listen to those statistics. But I also know that many people buy books. A much smaller percentage of people read them, and an even smaller percentage of people apply what they read in them. So you could buy a $15 book that tells you how to increase your odds exponentially of having a successful, not Amazon.com, just a successful business. Like that's it. And we're not talking unicorns, just a business. And if you, but the fact that you can get that book for $15, that doesn't mean every 90% of people are out there just having running a really successful, sustainable small business, even though the roadmap is there. But the reading it, first of all, and then doing the work, that's the part that people just don't want to do. And it's not for everyone either, which is fine. And some people who hear me now might think I'm like some sort of evangelist or vigilante against employment. That's not it either. I I think being employed is fine. We need people to work for businesses, but first of all, being employed by a company you're not aligned with, very painful.
Mm.
Uh, but being employed, there are companies you can be aligned with that all over the place. I'm trying to build one, and but being entirely dependent on your employer is not fair to your employer or yourself or your family, and it's just dangerous. It's like not having insurance or whatever. So that's books, podcasts. My parents were of very modest means. My dad worked, but my parents both basically worked within the church, and but my dad had a Vanguard account. I just remembered he was a Vanguard guy, and Vanguard wasn't as obvious of a choice back then, and he was also an Apple guy back when it was not at all a choice. I like made him get a PC for us at one point because none of the video games were for Mac back then. And I was like, we have to get a PC. And now I'm so grateful that he was an Apple guy back before it was cool. And so the parental influence, if you're lucky enough to have that, is helpful. And, blogs where the physicians are very lucky now. Before, Jim Daly started this revolution of physician kind of finance education, there wasn't as much out there. And then if you're not as psyched to read a book, that's okay. Just have someone, just pay for some expertise, a fee, like an hourly based financial advisor, pay for a few hours every year and have them tell you what to do. That's what I pay lawyers for. Like, I don't read books about law since I'm not interested in it. So when I need a lawyer, I pay them for whatever I need them for.
And the finance thing is so interesting. So in the gap between my last job and my current job, when I wasn't making an income, I dove into finance. And I think we probably could have geeked out on finance together because there are so many people that prey on physicians and dentists. I'm like, you have to know enough to know if you're getting played or not, to know if your investment's wise, to understand, to have that consult only. Like, you don't have to shift your assets underneath a financial advisor. Have that consult only, ask them all the questions, understand what you're doing, demystify it, and make it simple. Like, investing can be so simple.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're like, it's overwhelming because we don't know. It's not our territory. And
Totally.
like, once you start to make it your territory, it's so empowering. I feel.
No doubt. Yes, pay those people for their knowledge. Like, don't pay them to take 1% of all of your money every year. Like that a lot of people will advise against that, and I think that's good advice. But it's not fair to say, well, don't pay any sort of expert. We're all like, for physicians and dentists, we rely on people paying us for our expertise, or insurance companies paying us, whatever it is. So it's really hypocritical to then not believe in paying other experts for their expertise and expecting them to be compensated well for it. So that, there's the whole spectrum. There's completely DIY, completely, I want nothing to do with this, but I know it's important, so I'm going to invest a little more to pay someone to help me. And then the half and half kind of thing, hybrid approach. And so whatever way you want, it's just important that you do it. There are many ways to do it, and so many communities to be a part of that can make you feel empowered. So I know as a woman, you can attest, I'm sure the way that women are socialized is different than the way that men are. And that's changing over time, but it's not complete. It's still different. And that's why there's so many communities of women helping women exclusively. And that's great. Like, if you feel intimidated in certain spaces, find a space that makes you feel safe. And all of a sudden you get in a room of people being excited about this. And the next thing you know, you're buying a rental property or something. Who knows what happens, but
I get swept away in all those options.
Yeah. And only complicate it if it's fun for you. Like,
yes.
you said the most important thing. It can be stupid simple. And that's like Ramit Sethi. He's a wonderful, like, I will teach you to be rich. The guy perfect. Like, I always thought that was a terrible brand, but his brand is perfect. Like, it's a brilliant name for his brand. And he is the king of simplicity. Just automate the systems, invest a little bit of time, put them on autopilot. If you want to decorate your tree with some real estate or some crypto or whatever it is that you're comfortable doing and you have fun doing, fine. But you can do so fine with the super simple set it and forget it. Like, I don't want anything to do with this. And it's a good way to not, as what is his name? The Psychology of Money. His name is slipping my mind, but
Morgan,
he
is it
says,
Morgan?
yeah, at Morgan Housel, Morgan Housel.
Housel. I couldn't
And
pronounce it.
he like, just don't, the best way to lose a game that you're so clearly going to win is to bottom yourself out on some bad deal, like bad investing in something that you're clearly not educated enough in, and taking too much risk. So you don't have to take a lot of risk. Yeah, I love that simplicity model, because just put your money to work, start it early, and ask someone for help, or read one book. That's all you need. Just pick one, because they all say the same stuff in a different way. So just
Yeah,
read one book.
it's that sense of urgency. And also what's been happening is that with all of the things that you can invest in, and even the dream of a different job, if we're not doing the work and understanding, it becomes an
You
escape
bet.
fantasy.
You bet.
And so that's what I've been noticing. There's a couple things that you were talking about that I keep seeing coming up. It's that scarcity mindset that can come from people, the upbringing, or also being in medical school with high debt, and then being paid low as a resident, and then thinking you'll never have enough. And like, as you were saying with that book, like what gets you here won't get
Yeah.
you there.
Okay.
We
Yeah.
have to unlearn to relearn that and create this more abundant mindset,
Yeah.
which is also very helpful when we're thinking about careers. And if you're in a sense of burnout, where that survival mode actually creates like blinders where you can't see all the options, and increases the chance that you'll feel more hopeless and trapped.
True.
So being around those communities that show you what is possible and how to do it in an informed and lower your risk way is it is so important. And I've highly valued being around those communities, but also checking in with yourself. Like, that sounds great for that person. Do
Yeah.
I really like, I did buy the investment course for the Airbnbs.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I could see myself doing that. Maybe in a while I'll learn it now to lower my risk by having the education.
Good for you.
And you always kind of have to sit, because you're like, well, do I do it now? And always check in, is now the right time in my life, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also knowing, like, for your life, what do you truly want? Because people can be wildly successful with like the high finances, like, but my brother is very financially successful, and was in school forever and don't make high income
Yeah.
comparatively to even, other physician salaries. I'm currently a research fellow. I live a very simple life. So when I met with the financial advisor, he's like, your savings rate's ridiculous. You need to spend more. But I realized, like, if we keep things simple, it
Yeah.
lowers that financial anxiety. And
Totally.
I am a single female, so I won't say, I know that people have, the families and different things that play into their costs, but also like just making sure that you're not buying something to fill this void that isn't about that whatever
Yeah.
purchase you think is going to make you happier.
No doubt about it. I think that's so elegantly put, and it is so true that it just doesn't need to be complicated. Complicate it if it's fun for you. Take a course, learn something. Don't feel like you need to if you finish the course and you don't immediately buy, and this is going to trigger you probably, a cabin in the Great Smoky Mountains, it's okay. Those people overpaid, oh my God, horribly for their cabins in the Great Smoky Mountains a year ago or whatever it was. And if you end up buying a short-term rental, 3 years from now, you're probably going to do a lot better. But even if you never buy one, it's fine. You educated yourself, you met people, you met new people. That's awesome. Or if you want to take a class on something totally different, like, I just love the idea that all this education is available to us.
Yes.
You don't have to do something with it immediately or feel pressured into doing that, but also beware, I'm a victim to, or I'm susceptible to it, shiny object syndrome. Like, this doctor's doing this doctor's doing that, like that. And that is hard and it's a very human thing. It's hard to avoid that. but just check in with yourself like that. And also check it if you do have a spouse, and I've learned this, check in with your spouse. Don't, you could get yourself in a lot of trouble if you just assume that they're on board with whatever you're excited about. So a lot of gold there. And I love that you opened up about that. It's that we could, like you said, we could nerd out about it. We just did. But it's an important topic.
It is.
And thankfully, a lot of doctors are getting more and more comfortable with it. But I think it's still definitely the minority of it, because once we get into these communities, it's a bubble. So it feels like, oh yeah, everybody thinks about this stuff.
Yeah, it does feel like that. It does feel like that. I've had to extract myself from some in the period. Like there are seasons of your life, and
Yes,
like as you're building your practice, you might need some time and some space to think for yourself
for
and
sure.
to breathe. But you were talking about the I will teach you to be rich.
Yeah.
And I know you have a social media presence, and we hear
Mhm.
about branding. Can you
Yeah.
share more about branding?
No, sure. I was just filling out a brand kind of questionnaire for my the branding expert and consultant that I'm working with. This is one of the things that I know enough about to be dangerous, and I don't want to skimp on. The three things that I think are really important not to skimp on if you're starting a practice. Disclaimer, speaking as someone who has never built a successful practice, because I have not yet built a practice. But just from what I've been thinking so far, legal. I do. If the attorney says they are $500 an hour, I say, great, you probably earned it. Tell me what I need to know and nothing else. I'm not going to send you any more emails because you're going to bill me for every time you read an email. But I appreciate your expertise. Legal, insurance, obviously, and branding and marketing. And branding and marketing to me are two very different things. I had a LinkedIn post the other day where I was in a coffee shop that I work at a lot of days. It's a local shop in my town that I like to support, and I took a close-up photo of my business card on their wall where sort of local businesses can hang their stuff and promote something, but just a close-up of it. So all you saw was my business card, and I said, this is branding. And then I zoomed out and showed the whole wall, and the fact that it was in a coffee shop or in a public space, and it said, this is marketing. Branding is who you are. It's your message. It's consistency. It's what people feel and think, and just the vibe they get when they see your name or hear your slogan or your music or whatever it is they associate with you. Just do it. Nike, you're watching that commercial and you're like, wow. Like I always think of Nike because they have an incredible marketing firm that they work with. And their commercials are never about shoes or clothes or whatever. So that's branding. So it's what people associate with you, good or bad. And people who say, oh, I don't branding, I don't like selling, that sort of thing. The people who know what they're talking about say you have a brand either way. Either you're creating it for yourself or someone else is creating it for you. People are making one up about you, and that could be a really bad one. So if you don't take charge of it.
Yes.
So I believe in working with experts for that reason. I think the thing that I'm going to come up with after investing in this is going to be much, much, much more professional, better, and it's going to have fewer blind spots. That's what I was worried about. Like, what am I not focusing on because I'm not a trained expert in this area that I really need to be focusing on? And they're just going to do a lot better job in way shorter of a time than I would do it if I was DIYing. And then marketing is putting your brand, making your brand visible to not as many people as humanly possible. That's inefficient marketing, but efficient marketing is getting yourself in front of people who value what you're selling. And that increases exponentially your ability to convert people who value what you're selling into people who are going to buy something from you. And there's nothing wrong with selling something. Dentists and doctors sell something to people via insurance companies all day long in the conventional setting. But as soon as we're selling directly to the patient, it's all of a sudden it's selling, right? But
I'm really bad at it. I am.
And that's a like what limiting belief, right? That you're bad at.
I have been coached on that so many times, and then when it comes, it's like a reflection of my own internal beliefs about my self-worth
no
and
doubt.
money. It's like a combination of money psychology and self-worth.
Yes.
And like Ah.
Yeah,
So we
totally.
need to have
And it's
another
icky. It
conversation.
feels like it's an overwhelming sense of like ickiness around selling. And I'm a doctor, so is it unethical to sell? That's a fraught conversation as well. And I get it. There are bad people in every profession, but bad people in medicine, they are particularly bad because there are humans at risk here who we're supposed to help, and we've taken an oath, things like that. But good doctors also need to sell. They have a responsibility to sell. Otherwise, they won't be able to sustain themselves and provide a service, a valuable service to people. And the reason a lot of us are, I think, attracted to the typical model that usually burns us out, there aren't a lot of people selling directly to patients who are complaining about how they're burned out, is the fact that insurance companies put patients on our schedules and we
Uh-huh.
don't have to sell to anyone.
Yep.
The job sells you in that full patient panel from day one, and it's never not
Uh,
full. So and that's fine if you can never get over not wanting to sell yourself. Then you have to sell yourself in another way. You sell yourself to the corporation. You don't sell yourself to people who you're trying to help. Um,
you can
so
sell your services or your soul.
yes,
No, just
yes, exactly,
so
exactly. But it takes
yeah.
practice. Nobody is comfortable. Like we are not. Few people are inherently comfortable selling. But if you learn some things and practice, and
Mhm.
you speak beautifully, and you have a show, you have a YouTube show. You probably didn't think you would do that several years before you started this, but now you do because you did it a few times. And if you watch the first show you made,
But don't. But don't.
so I had this idea yesterday. I wrote it down in my notes because my wife at one point called my content cringe, and I was like, yeah, it is cringe because I'm just starting. Like, of
Yeah.
course it's cringe. If it wasn't cringe, that would be weird that I was immediately good at this stuff. But I was like, how cringe is your content? How cringe is my content? It was like a rating site that I was imagining in my head for
That
like
is so funny.
people who are just like getting started and wanting to experiment in a safe space. It would be a pay to play. Like you'd have to post your own stuff if you wanted to comment on other people. But it was just like, how cringe is this? Like out of 0 out of 10, how cringe am I right now? And I don't know, it just made me laugh when I was thinking
It
about it. But
is
because we're
so
all
funny.
cringe at the beginning, we're
It's
all
so great.
cringe.
Yeah, so I started YouTube at my most awkward state. I had
Yeah,
just gotten braces, which we talk about. I had
that's
just
all. I'm getting braces soon. We can talk about
Yeah,
that too.
I had just weight restored from a very restrictive eating disorder, so my face was very swollen.
Oh my god.
I am introverted. I was having a lot of self-limiting beliefs, and I just was like, if I don't start it now, and I watched and you know what's hilarious is I got a new microphone, but I forgot to like switch over it on Zoom, so I kept using the
Yeah,
regular
of
computer
course.
microphone. And I had a MacBook Air. So anytime I recorded a video, I had to delete everything because the storage was it was, if anyone has any sort of self doubts, anything getting in their way,
Yeah,
just, I mean, I listen to people that have big channels and they'll
yeah.
talk about their early days. And I love that they do that.
Hmm. It's good. It's I think I love it in podcast. I pay attention. I've been a podcast consumer for 15 years, probably avid, like addicted level consumer. So I admit that about myself. And finally am launching my own in January, but
Awesome.
always have wanted to. Thank you. Uh, but what I love about podcasts, what I find when I like, especially if they're not, Apple suggests that you don't number them, at least at the front of the title these days, but people used to number them and some people still do. And you scroll it. Because if I find one I like to listen from the beginning often. And you go down, and if they're numbered, you're like, it goes to 20, and then we're like, where's the rest? And it just like starts at 20. And they're like, because that person was terrible for the first 20 episodes and they
Yeah.
deleted it. They're so,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but then you listen to or you listen to one of the early episodes and they have and like a little blurb about a lead magnet or something that they put at the beginning, but they clearly made that one when they were good, and then it's at the front of an episode when they're bad, and they're juxtaposed, and that's really fun for me too. And it's just, I mean, it's, you just got to shoot your shot and get a coach. Like if you want to get better faster, get a coach. If you don't want to pay someone, just spend a lot more time getting better and do a lot more reps. But like, if I'm going to learn to shoot free throws, I'm going to get faster if someone's like standing watching my elbow be like this instead of like this, and everything I can't see myself doing. If they're just staring at me doing that and saying, I've taught people to do this and you should just adjust your, I'm not going to ramble on about that, but just a lot of just the knowledge that we all suck at the beginning of anything that we're doing. Take a lesson from kids learning to walk or whatever people tend to talk about. But I commend you on putting yourself out there, especially in such an awkward phase of your life as you. It can only get better, right?
I don't know. Maybe it could get worse. I don't know. It probably could get worse. But also, I edit my own videos so I could pick up on quirks in the way that I communicate or other people communicate, or I listen very intently, so I like don't move a lot. I'm not very animated. I'm like, wow, that's really awkward
I
to
look like
watch.
a robot.
But it's like, okay, well, interesting, because if you delegate that, which editing is like the most time consuming part, but you miss the opportunity to see and reflect, and then also like soliciting feedback, you have to be prepared for what you hear. And I'm like, I don't actually want to know what people think now.
If you want honest feedback, be ready for honest feedback. That's true. But know that that's what you're looking for. There are just so many fun ways for those of us who have the courage, and the drive to get ourselves out there. And the most gratifying part of it is this kind of stuff. Outside of genuinely helping someone directly one-on-one, is that network that we all know is so important now, in the community of people, and making new friends like this. And that's the biggest value, that is totally not related to money or directly related to income. But all these things help grow your brand. Trust. Like if I have a patient who's stumbles upon my website, and then they see this video on YouTube, either they're going to hate me because they're like, why is he having a drink and he's talking really fast and he's yelling and it's all over the place, or they're going to be like, that's my dude, like I'm going to go see him, he's going to fix my skin. And that's to the point of, like, if you're serving, what people say often too, if you're trying to serve everyone, you're serving no one, all these types of things, that you just need to find your person. I am not everyone's dermatologist. That's what I love about the idea of having my own practice, matching my skills with people who are motivated to learn from my skills, like what I'm delivering. Not that we are trapped with each other like it would be in a lot of insurance-based systems. I am not everybody's person in that regard, and not every patient I am excited to take care of because of the way they treat me or anything. So the way that so you can self-select a little bit more when you have that autonomy is attractive to me. But trade-offs, and I'm still glad I took the amount of time I did to train within that environment. But I'm excited to be going on this little more unbeaten path, because a lot of us go. You probably did it too, and I was straight and narrow for 30. I have this picture with me. That's my dog up there. I don't know if you can see her. She's right up here.
Is it? Okay, now I can see a little bit.
There's
the blur goes off.
She's back there, and it might be blurry. Sorry.
That's
and I have a picture of myself and her on our balcony in California, and it says like last day of 32nd grade or whatever, when on my last day of residency. Like, we go straight through, right? And to have the courage to go on a little bit of a less predictable path is daunting, but also exciting. But I'm rambling, so
I like it.
Back to you.
I like this idea when I think about, sometimes when we are in new territory, it can feel like, oh, I don't have any options. And it depends what lens you have. If you go there and you're exhausted and you have this kind of depression that's over your brain, it's like hard to see. But if you think about where you are now, you have this white canvas that you can create, like that it's yours. And you are creating. You said about your podcast, you have your own private practice coming, and I think you have some other things. Can you share with us all the things that are coming down the pike for you?
Thank you for asking. I'm really excited about that. And it feels, even though I was sort of thrown into this, and it's been a lot for my family and I to sort of work through, and things like that. I still am I know in the future, and right now I'm trying to be grateful that it happened. And I'm just being grateful for the ability to take time to work in a different way, and have that not just like patient after patient after patient after patient after patient after patient, then write notes all through lunch, and then patient after patient, like a little bit more variety in my day. And I'm really enjoying that. So the practice is hopefully going to be opening around January 2024 or so. The most important thing is it is a direct care dermatology practice, going to be totally virtual at first. I am seeking to help people who aren't being served or helped by the conventional typical dermatology practice. Many people are helped completely adequately by that system, not everyone. So there are other options. There will continue to be many more. Direct care simply means no insurance, transparent prices, just like you would pay any other professional or for any other service. And if that feels like you, then wait for me to be live. You can find my website, Lewellis, MD, my last name, MD.com, is where you can find other things about me. I have an awesome guide about how to incorporate a topical retinoid into your skincare routine. I think that's one of the most important things you can do from a very early age if you at all care about anti-aging stuff. And it's something patients ask me about all the time, and it's the thing I focus on most when the doorknob question, when after the hair loss and psoriasis, we've talked about all these things, and then they say, well, what can I just do for my skin? And then I have a handout I usually give, but I've expanded that, and I have it as a download that you can get for free. There's a button on my website. There's also a shortcut. If you just do retinoids, 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 that's that typical type of medication, .lewellismd.com. You can get that guide right there. LinkedIn, I'm really active on, just because I enjoy the conversation that LinkedIn creates. If you are a contributor as well as a commenter, as well, if you participate in the conversation, it's really nice because there just aren't as many trolls, and it's nice for connecting with people like you. Definitely. and propping each other up. It's genuine, but it's still it's we support each other, and that's really nice. So those are the main places right now, and the podcast will be coming January 2024. It's called the Direct Care Derm. It's my story. You can sort of learn from my screw ups, but you can also learn from me interviewing other people who are in the direct care game within dermatology, but also other relevant experts from legal, branding, marketing. Hey, Amanda Hill, you got to come on the pod if you want. You have to come on, and just everything a person would need who is even thinking about, I don't really like my gig right now. Is there another way? And if they're interested in direct care. So that was a lot, but thank you for letting me share.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to share all of your links down below, and we've shared so many tremendous things. What are the main takeaways you would want people to have from this discussion?
Absolutely. So I would say you are, if you're a health professional, you're a doctor, you're a dentist, whatever it happens to be, your job, if you have a job, is very secure in that you will always be able to find someone to give your services to in return for making a good living. But that's not always going to be in the specific job that you have. Things can change. Pandemics can happen. Politics can happen at work. Sudden things can happen. So realize that that is a risk that it's worthwhile mitigating against. And the more you prepare yourself for not being dependent on your employer if you choose to be employed, and think about making a brand for yourself even while you're in there. Dr. Una, I'm sure you probably know her.
Absolutely.
She talks about being an intrapreneur. I think that's such a brilliant concept. Treat your employed job as if you're running a private practice. And that's going to be treat your staff like they're your staff, like you are paying them, like you are their leader, because they see you as their leader. You're a doctor, you're a dentist. So steel yourself against these sort of hurricane, kind of tornado, catastrophic type of traumatic events that can happen, even though it's not your fault, because you still have to deal with it, even if it's not your fault. And in my case, it was a little bit my fault, a little bit not my fault, whatever. Depends who you ask. But on the record, it was a without cause termination. So I will always have that going for me. And that's, yeah, I just need more people to hear about this, because I know there are docs out there who are like, this happened to me. I spoke up about being worried about my patients not having enough adequately trained nurses on the floor at midnight. And I talked about this and they fired me. And you just the more people who hear that, the better they'll feel, I think.
And to know, would you do it again?
Yeah, true. Yeah, and you have to be aligned. That the damage that misalignment happens. Just ask a chiropractor or whatever, like someone with scoliosis. Talk to them about what the damages of chronic misalignment of anything in your life does to you and the pain it causes.
And the same thing goes with the mental health. People are so afraid to get help. And I was the person that got kicked out and lost my military career for getting help. I would do it again.
That's crazy. Good for you. And I'm so sorry that happened.
Right. But
you started something. You have played a role now in changing the culture, even if it feels very little. And I'm sorry for interrupting you, but you should be acknowledged for that.
No, it's both of our stories become other people's survival guides. So thank you so much, Stephen, for being here and sharing ours.
Thank you. It was so nice to chat with you. I hope, let's get on your other show. I'm excited to hear about your other show that's more medical leaning. And seriously, a dermatologist and an oral health specialist getting together to talk a little LP, that would be helpful, and I would learn a ton.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank everyone for being here. If you have questions, comments, reflections, please share them down below and check out where you can find Stephen in the show notes. Until next time.